Unfair sentencing in the criminal justice system by Star Valdez. We have seen throughout American history the treatment of the black community. We have seen the systematic racism throughout our entire justice system. We have seen enough to where we can all agree the unmoral treatment between the justice system and the black community. The black community has always received brutal treatments from all parts of the CJ system. Starting with police brutality. In 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. was known for being a social activist for equal rights and who played a huge part in America's civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963 said, "There are those who are asking for the devotees of civil rights. When will you be satisfied?" This message continues to reverberate in modern times after a lengthy past of brutal encounters between black Americans and police. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. Velocity 9999, 2020. Since then, police brutality has always been in the back of America's head. Police brutality has always been an issue in America, it was just that no one thought to record or simply could not. Today, every black male or female that has even the slightest interaction with a police officer, they are recording it. Social media and police brutality have become hand in hand, in which has helped many innocent people that were killed in the hands of a police officer receive their justice. Social media and live streams have progressed police brutality incidents beyond the black population and mainstream interpretations. Modern technology allows, indeed insists, that the white community take notice of these kinds of situations and incidents, Pretzer says. Velocity 9999, 2021. In 2011, St. Louis officer Jason Stockley shot Anthony Lamar Smith after he fled. Stockley considered the man was dealing drugs. After Stockley was reported announcing he was going to kill this mother effer, he was charged in 2016. In 2017, he was acquitted of first-degree murder. Stockley announced he saw a gun prior to the shooting, which was considered legally justified. Velocity 9999, 2020. With no remorse, police officers would rather keep the tough on crime because they feel like it is the right thing to do. Not everyone hopes to see the justice system change course. At a recent Senate hearing on overcrowding in the federal prison system, Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican Iowa, and Jeff Sessions, Republican Alabama, both applauded tough sentencing laws, crediting those policies for the precipitous decline in the country's violent crime rates over the last few decades. It's hard to think of a more successful domestic policy accomplished over the last 30 years than the reduction of crime rates that we have, Grassley said. NAFO, Riley, 2017. The Central Park Five experienced mistreatment from police officers in the courts. Police officers unlawfully searched the five men for weapons or anything illegal because they were wrongly identified due to their race. This all began when a woman's body was found in New York City's Central Park in 1989. She was beaten and raped, which placed her into a coma for 2 weeks. When the woman was found, it quickly led to the arrest of 5 black and Latino teens, which is where the name was created, the Central Park Five. In 2002, after the teens already served 6 to 13 years, there was new DNA that proved that the teens who had already been serving time were the original suspects. Matías Reyes was the convicted rapist and was eventually sentenced. This is just one of the many examples of the mistreatment of the criminal justice system where black males did not receive a just trial. These teens were thrown away in a prison for a crime they did not commit just because of their race. The police and even the public assumed that because they are black/Hispanic that they were the rapists without it being proven by DNA. These boys' lives wasted away in prison even though it was not proven that those boys were at the scene of the crime. The United States criminal law system has been plagued for years with unfair and biased cases that involved police officers, judges, and attorneys. Many cases, which involved defendants facing years of imprisonment for crimes they didn't even commit, were later acquitted of the crimes. In 2010, Michael Ross Browder was another white man shot and killed a young black male at a traffic stop just hours after he was sworn in as an officer. On June 19, just like the Central Park after he was sworn in, there was no evidence to prove he stole the backpack, but because he was black, he is labeled as a thug. Khalif Browder was arrested, but there was implication that he was at the scene at the time of the crime but was falsely identified. Khalif was unfairly stopped and frisked by police officers and blamed for the crime after being falsely identified by the Mexican man who was robbed for the backpack. Coleman, 2019. Shane Bechet, a white man from Watertown, New York, was convicted of raping a 14-year-old female at his home after giving her alcohol and gifts when he invited her into his home. He only received months of probation and no jail time. After pleading guilty to the third-degree rape, the girl's family urged the courts to jail the sexual deviant but instead was given 10 years of probation and no jail time. He would also have to register as a low-level sex offender on the state's registry. He was also ordered to not be in the party of a person as young as 17 and was forced to pay a fine of $1,425. Coleman, 2019. Ethan Couch was another man guilty of killing 4 people while driving intoxicated and was sent to a rehabilitation center instead of being put in prison for the deaths of the 4 innocent people. He later flew out of the United States and was found at a resort with his mom. After he fled, he finally served time in prison, but because he fled, not because he killed innocent people. On June 15, 2013, in Burleson, Texas, Ethan Couch killed 4 people while driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. He was indicted on 4 counts of intoxication manslaughter for recklessly driving under the influence. His attorneys argued that the teen had affluenza and needed rehabilitation instead of prison. A judge sentenced him to 10 years probation in December 13. By December 2015, he vanished, and when he was found at a resort in Mexico with his mother, he was finally sent to jail for 2 years, only for violating his probation. He is free to this day. News Unfair sentencing seems to be a repetitive issue in America because of what you look like. With these cases presented in this paper, a white man can sexually abuse a young girl and receive slim to no time in prison, but if this man were black, he would have received time or even worse. Unfair sentencing is extremely problematic because being white gives you a certain privilege in America. The National Research Council reported half of the 222% growth in the state prison population between 1980 and 2010 was due to an increase of time served in prison for all offenses. There has also been a historic rise in the use of life sentences. 1 in 9 people in prison is now serving a life sentence, nearly a third of whom are sentenced to life without parole. The Sentencing Project, 2020. Any Black and Hispanic person pays repercussions in society and must be careful with what they do or say for the reason that in some situations it is life or death. The NAACP has been involved in informing effective law enforcement practices since its inception. In 1910, the NAACP took on its first legal action in defense of Pink Franklin, a poor, African-American sharecropper who had attempted to protect his home against an illegal police raid. Unfortunately, 100 years later, fundamental issues that erode trust and public safety between law enforcement and African American and other communities of color continue to exist. NAACP, 2021. In conclusion, to think that our justice system could completely change their ways and thoughts on the black men and women is absurd. Our criminal justice system will continue to treat black men and women like they are inferior until we start to teach the younger generation that just because you are not white, or a man, does not mean you are incompetent to becoming successful. We start to do that, the rest of the country will start to catch on. And so, as life continues further, we will have people in pure courtrooms that will serve justice the correct and moral way. We will have men who are convicted of rape or murder, no matter the race, be sentenced the way we have our laws set up, and there would be no more unfair sentencing in the criminal